Learning to be a PhotoPass photographer took a lot of training at the time. Here's a look at how much training and what training that we did when I learned to become a PhotoPass photographer. I became a PhotoPass photographer back in 2006. At the time, PhotoPass was relatively new. It was less than a year old and was in the midst of expansion, and it had a lot of training that went along with it. We actually took more than a week to get fully trained, almost two if you start including everything. And it included all sorts of different aspects of the training. Some of it other cast members did, but a lot of it unique to PhotoPass itself. Like every single Disney cast member out there, we started off with a full day of traditions. Traditions is your introduction to working at Walt Disney World, and actually every Disney cast member, whether it is at the studios, whether it's at the theme parks, or wherever, they all go through some form of traditions to introduce them to the company, as well as introducing them to the key values of the company. We called them the keys to the kingdom at Disney World, which was safety, efficiency, show, courtesy. All of those were important. They were our four big keys, and everything revolved around those. And I've actually talked about traditions in other videos, so I'll give you a link to those in the description. But after a full day of traditions, we would then get an appointment. And for that appointment, we would then actually get another full day of training where most of it was actually a tour of the park that we were going to be working in. So we gathered early one morning before the park opened, a whole bunch of different cast members from different departments, and we took a tour of the Magic Kingdom. We got to see several areas backstage that we needed to know about. We got to walk through the park as if we were guests and experience one or two of the rides, and got to be familiar with things that we needed to know as cast members. It included a tour of the utilidors in our case, and here's wardrobe, and here's the cafeteria, and things that we needed to know so we could find our way around. At the end of that day, we all gathered in the theater that used to be in the back of the Grand Expo, and we waited for somebody from our department to come meet us. And so I was met by a couple of PhotoPass photographers who met me and two other people who were in our group, and they took us down to where the PhotoPass base or headquarters was at Magic Kingdom. That way we would know where it was, introduced us to the managers, and then showed us our first initial schedule to actually do PhotoPass training. So at that point, we were starting to become official, and even up to this point, we hadn't even worn any actual Disney costumes. We were just in what they called a business casual. We had to look nice, so no jeans, no t-shirts, but still, come in looking like we were ready for work, even though we weren't actually working in the parks. It was at this point, too, that we really started to wear our name tags. For the traditions, we had a little paper name tag, and we were given our regular name tag. But for the tour, we did not wear our name tag because we didn't want to look like something that guests would want to go after. After all of that, we finally got to start the real training. And for PhotoPass at the time, we had 3 or 4 days of just in-classroom training. One whole day was just, here is a camera, here's what settings are, here's what aperture means, here is how to adjust your shutter speed, how do the aperture and shutter work together, what is ISO? So we essentially had a crash course on how to be a photographer and how to use a camera and what the settings mean. Some of it was actually kind of ironic because later on, we really didn't use the settings. We were told what to change and leave it at that. So we didn't have a lot of flexibility with what settings to use, but they wanted us to know what they were so that if something happened, we would at least have an idea of what we were doing and how to change it on the fly. You see, not every person who came into PhotoPass was a photographer. In fact, at the time, I kind of thought of myself as an amateur photographer, but I really didn't know much of anything. PhotoPass taught me how to use a camera and how to get the most out of it. Even then, I still sometimes default to some basic settings just because they're easier. So they showed us how to be able to do all of that and how to get comfortable with the camera. So we basically had 2 days of learning how to hold a camera, learning how to change the lens on a camera, You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to do that. After 2 days of that, then we got to go out into the park as groups. And occasionally you will still see groups of photographers going out like this. 5 people, for example, none of which have vests on, but they've all got the white shirts and they kind of look like PhotoPass, but not quite. And they're taking pictures of each other. Well, that's because you're getting a full day of practice where you're taking what you've learned in the classroom and now you're going out and you're taking pictures of each other, trying to make sure you're getting good pictures. Then you go back to the classroom again, look at the pictures all of you took, go through them, and this is good, that's bad, this needs to be improved, watch out for this. And then you go out and do it again some more. Then you go back and evaluate them, and so you do that several times, so that way you can see what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, what others are doing, and it gives you some opportunities as well to learn how to be creative and do some fun things and try to get down what it's going to actually be like as a photographer. You also begin to start doing role plays where you act like you're the photographer and somebody else is a guest and comes up and interacts with you. You'll switch around. I'll be the guest one time while they're the photographer, and then you switch places, trying to get the feel of what it is like to be able to actually work in the park. In addition to all that, you're also learning about the whole PhotoPass system as well, the memory maker and how it works, how to get the pictures, how to scan the pictures, how to use PhotoPass cards, all the technology, making sure that your PDA is attached, what to do if something doesn't work or if there's a mechanical issue. Essentially, you get 4 days of all this learning. Here's the equipment. Let's go use it for a little bit. Okay, let's go learn a little bit more about the equipment. Now let's go use it for a little bit. And all of that is just getting you to the basic level where you can stand on Main Street and take a picture of a guest with a castle. At that point, they then sort of turn you loose. And on my first initial day in the park, we had a morning where we came in, we got a little bit more classroom prep, reviewed everything, and then we went out into the park for about 2 or 3 hours, and we had 4 of us as trainees, if I'm remembering this right. It's been 13 years, so it's a little fuzzy, where we stood out on Main Street and we began taking pictures of guests while our trainers were there bouncing between all of us and making sure that we knew what we were doing. So we weren't really on our own, but at the same time, it was kind of like being on your own. And that was the first thing that we did, was we began taking a few supervised guided pictures of guests on Main Street at the Magic Kingdom. Then after that, we again went back to the classroom and we began to review the pictures, review what we did, review how the interactions went, and make sure that we were comfortable with it. The next day, we were on our own. So at that point, we'd had about 6 days of training, including traditions and the tour, before we finally got turned loose to only take pictures of the castle during the daytime. That was it. We didn't get to do anything else. That came later. The view, which is where you sell the pictures, was actually another day of training. And we had actually talked about it some in the previous training, but then we had another half day where we sat again in the classroom. Here's how it works. Here's how you're going to use the computer terminals. Here's how everything's going to work out. Here's how you're going to print the pictures. Here's what it looks like coming out. Then we would actually go down and we would actually practice changing the ink on a printer and trying to make sure we knew how all of that equipment worked, and then spent the rest of the day working in the view, learning and working with guests so that we'd get hands-on. We still weren't even close to being done. The next thing that came up for us was night shot training. The daytime pictures are one thing, but it's a whole nother thing when you start shooting at night. And you wouldn't think it was that much of a jump, but it actually is, because the settings change, how you interact with the guests changes, the way you position them changes. Again, we had about a half day of training, sitting down and saying, okay, how do we take the night shots? How is this going to work? What are we going to do? What are the settings you use? And then grabbing tripods and cameras that evening and going out onto the streets and shooting night shots with the guests. Taking what we learned and putting it into practice. That still wasn't all of it. That just basically got us completely covered as far as the basics. If we wanted to shoot some magic shots, such as the Tinkerbell shot, or Mickey and Minnie appearing on the benches, and some of those other fun kinds of shots, then we would kind of have to bug the trainer and say, hey, show us these. I believe now in the basic training they show the Tinkerbell hand shot, and I think we had that in our basic training. But any other magic shots, you would actually have to ask for extra training or how to do it. For those of us who were around at that time, we just basically grabbed a person, hey, show me how you shoot it so I can go out and do it. And that was pretty much it. We didn't have any official training on most of the magic shots. We just, show me how it is. What do I have to do? got it, and we went and did it. They don't do that anymore. I'm pretty sure. But the last bit of training that we had to have was character training. Yeah, you can't just grab the camera and go shoot with the characters, because in all of this, there are specific shots that they want you to get. With the castle and what we call the icons, so Spaceship Earth, the hat at Hollywood Studios at the time, the Tree of Life at Animal Kingdom, there are basically three main shots that you were supposed to take. You're supposed to get your main shot, which is a vertical shot going from about the waist up with the icon behind them. A horizontal shot, which would be close up, where you can see the icon a little bit behind them, but basically it was a focus on the family. And then what we called a creative shot. And this is where we would have them pose and do something fun, something different. And so we'd have three poses that we were supposed to do. And sometimes we'd do one or two more depending upon the family. Well, with characters, it's a completely different type of system. We actually ended up creating a system called Pass, which I actually talk about in one of my other videos. At the time I started, though, we didn't have Pass. And so, again, some of it was kind of creating what we were doing. You shoot the pictures a little bit differently with characters. Your main pose is, again, still horizontal, except this time you go all the way down to the feet and up to the top of the character, which you're not supposed to do with the icon. They do that now, and it drives me a little bit nuts because it doesn't look as good. But with the character, you get the whole body. And then again, you would do the horizontal close-up. But instead of doing a creative shot at the end, the idea was to be able to get candids of the interaction. So you get the picture of the guests as they're walking up to the character, excited and hands out. You get pictures of the character signing the autograph book. You would get pictures of the character giving them a hug or playing with them, and trying to capture those moments that an automatic box or that the guest or other person wouldn't think to capture. And that was what really made the magic with it. We spent a whole day doing character training. A lot of it was actually working with a couple of the characters, listening to them, talking with them. What do they want in an interaction? What makes it easier for them and more difficult? Trying on some of the outfits, role-playing again. We went through a lot of the training was essentially learning how to be one of the character attendants too. How to run the line, how to make sure things were flowing smoothly, what to look out for with the character if they were in trouble, how to properly handle guest cameras, and various things like that to make sure when we worked with the characters, not only were we taking the pictures, but we were being able to help the character make it a great interaction. We were able to help the character attendant keep the line moving, and essentially be able to just keep everything flowing smoothly while being able to get all of those pictures as well. So that was another whole day on top of everything else. And then again, after that, finally, then you got to step in with the characters. And I'll never forget my first time with characters. I got to shoot up at the train station with Mickey and Minnie, who were actually up front at the time. And Donald Duck was out there as well. I remember going into the break room and meeting the characters and kind of going, well, guys, this is my very first time, so be kind to me and give me advice. And the characters were wonderful. They gave me a little bit of coaching. We went out, shot with them for a while, and then came back in when they came in to take a break. Okay, so what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What can I improve on? They were wonderful in helping me to do better, to be able to help them and to be able to get the best poses. And so that was a great experience. I am actually still friends today with a couple of the characters that I worked with on my very first day. So that is an amazing thing. But at that point, finally, we had finished all of our basic training. Now, there were always new locations we were adding and new things we were trying, and so we would have to do some of that. But for the most part, that finally had us established as a fully trained PhotoPass photographer. All told, I think it came out to about 10 full working days of training all mixed in. 4 or 5 in the classroom to just get to the icons, plus the tour, plus traditions, a full day character training, the night shot training, the view training. So yeah, we were around 9 days, maybe 10. Of training. So it was a lot of training to get fully ready. I imagine now they probably have shortened it up because they have a lot of college program who were only there for 6 months to a year. And so they've tried to shorten up the training to get them out in the parks and get them shooting as much as possible, which is kind of sad. You can tell they're not as well trained as we were. And you can see some of the gaps there. There's some great photographers there, but I'm thinking, how much better would they be if they had some of that stuff that we had? If you're a PhotoPass photographer, did I miss something? I wouldn't be surprised. If you're a current one, how has it changed? I'd love to hear. If you worked at other places or a photographer at other parks, how is the training similar or different? I'd love to know. Please share it in the comments below. Please don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe if you haven't. Hit that bell icon so you can get the notifications because YouTube's being weird about sending those out. So if you want to know if I've got new videos, please make sure you hit that bell icon. Thank you to my patrons as well for supporting me. I couldn't do this without my patrons. My patrons are wonderful. If you want to know about supporting me or buying merchandise or my fan pages or so much more, please be sure to check the description below. There's a ton of info there for you. Thank you so incredibly much for watching, and God bless. At the end of that day, we all gathered at the theater that was up at the main square. No, that's not it. And that was the very first thing we did, was we took pictures of guests on Main Street at Disneyland. And that was the first Disneyland. I don't even know which park I was at. Magic Kingdom. At that point, fine. I want to thank you so much for watching too. If you haven't hit that bell icon, if you'd like to know about my merchandise, fan pages, and more, be sure to check the description below. If you'd like to know whenever I've got a new video posted, well, make sure you hit that button right up there and subscribe. If you'd like to watch another one of my videos, I've got a great one for you right here. And if you'd like to be like these wonderful people here and support me financially on Patreon, well, make sure you check the link right there. There's even some extra perks for them. Thank you so much, and God bless.